This weekend, we got UFC 313 live from Las Vegas. Jump in on all the action with my partners, DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC. Don't be intimidated. It is super easy for first-timers to get started. Try betting on something simple, like which fighter is going to win. And if you're new to DraftKings, listen up. All new customers who bet just $5 get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. When you sign up, use the promo code SONNEN. Staying on the action, use your $150 in bonus bets on DraftKings same-game parlays. This will give you a shot at an even bigger payout. You can combine multiple bets together from the same fights. Love the thrill of live betting? DraftKings has got you covered. Bet live on in-progress fights just as they happen, which will make watching the fights even more exciting. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and still have a shot at big cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. New customers, use my promo code SONNEN. Bet just $5 on any wager and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code SONNEN only at DraftKings Sportsbook. DraftKings, the crown is yours. All right, Pierre's in Las Vegas, and he's 22 pounds overweight. Now, I can relate to that exact number. I remember being in Las Vegas for a fight in the summertime, 22 pounds overweight. 22 pounds the day before weigh-ins, overweight. And I remember quite literally the depression of seeing that scale, seeing that number, knowing how much time was on the clock, and knowing what I was going to have to put myself through to get there. But that was private information. Like, Burt Watson made us get on the scale, but Burt didn't tell anybody what we weighed. He didn't report it or put it out. Pierre was very different. He got on the scale. He videotaped the whole thing. Let the world know he's 22 pounds over. Now, just to remind you, 22 pounds over on fight week is the exact same thing that Pierre used to be over when he was fighting down a weight class. So he's very used to this number of 22 pounds. But it does make you wonder just how big is this guy? I mean, he's already moved up 20 pounds to get to the weight class. He remains 22 pounds over. There's a conversation of him being a heavyweight that some people, myself included, are really hoping for. How big could he get? Could he get to 240? And we've seen heavyweight champions at 222. Right off the top of my head, Randy Couture was 222. Then we went through a little bit of a lighter phase there. Stipe Miocic, Cain Velasquez, just by example. Daniel Cormier, somewhere in that 240 range. Jon Jones himself believed he should be 240. He didn't quite get to his goal, but he took 3 years off trying to get to it. So Alex is 225 right now. If that magic number can be achieved anywhere between 222 like Randy and 240 like Cain, Daniel, and Stipe, I just wonder how big could he get? How big is the guy? You guys remember the late, great Rumble Johnson. But Rumble was one of these guys that it didn't matter what the weight class was, he was going to be 20 pounds over it. Rumble Johnson was fighting at 170. He missed weight a couple of times, and it was to the point where they go, hey, it's not your choice anymore. You're no longer at 170. You're a 185 pounder. His first time to the scale at 185, he missed it by 8 pounds. Do you guys remember that? I believe he was in Brazil. He was going to fight Vitor. And we couldn't believe it. We moved Rumble Johnson up so that he wouldn't miss weight. He missed weight up a weight by a larger number than he ever missed it down a weight. So then, that was like 2 strikes. If you miss weight and lose, even if you're Rumble Johnson, you're going to get cut. You're in a very bad spot. He did. He got cut. So he goes on to the regional scene, but he skips over 205. He goes straight up to heavyweight. I watched Rumble at heavyweight fight Andre Arlovsky. So then when he comes back to the UFC, comes down to 205, gets himself all the way to world championship contention, had multiple world title fights. I watched one against Daniel. I remember one that was scheduled against Jones. I mean, it was just interesting to watch the way Rumble's mind worked. I got to work with Kelvin Gastelum. And Kelvin was very much that same way. He did not care what the weigh-in was. He was going to train, he was going to prepare, and he was going to come in and have a really hard time making the weight. It didn't matter if you wanted to put him at 185 or 170. He'll be there. He'll get it done. And he's going to have you nervous up until the time he gets on the scale. Like, there's just some guys like that. And I wonder, how big could Pereira get? I mean, it's calories in versus calories out. Jon Jones found this out the hard way, right? When Jon took 3 years off, gave a world championship away, burned those 3 years. Millions upon millions of dollars in earnings. But he did it because he believed in his mind and in his studies, he needed to weigh 240 pounds. He came in short. He couldn't quite get there. He's 236. And you might think that's close, but I'm just sharing for you. You might think in your own mind, oh, I could put on 20 pounds. Oh, that'd be fun to put on 50 pounds. No, you can't. You cannot train twice a day and gain an endless amount of weight. It's calories in versus calories out. That's where Jon was working so hard. Got up to 236, came in short of his goal. I'm just wondering for Pereira, how big could he get? And the sumbitch stands 6'4". Are you aware of that? I don't know what Jon is, but I think Jon's 6'3". I believe Alex is an inch taller than Jon. And Jon is known for his length. I mean, that's a big frame. Could he get to 250? If I asked you, could Alex Pereira be world champion at heavyweight? You're either going to say yes, like a nut hugger without really even getting any thought, or you're going to go, let me be reasonable here. Pretty big. You got guys like Aspinall. Heavyweight's got guys like Francis that are floating around. Like, there's some really big boys out there. It would depend on who he gets matched up with. But if I told you Pereira's going to show up at 250 pounds, you don't know anything else. You don't know what he looks like at 250. But I had a crystal ball and I could tell you he's going to weigh 250. You're probably going to pick Pereira. You're probably going to pick Pereira to win against anybody at heavyweight. And for me, it's maybe the most interesting part about this Ankalaev fight. There's nobody in line to fight Pereira behind Ankalaev. There's not anybody calling for that fight. In fact, if you wanted to give him the heart, it would actually be Rachik, but Rachik won't call for the fight because of a code that Rachik lives by, which if he lost his last one, he's not going to call for a title fight. That would actually be a really hard matchup. But my point is, why don't you go? Do you have a better idea? Do you have another name? Do you have somebody you think can sell out a pay-per-view? Do you have somebody that you think can do a house? Do you have somebody that you believe could be a needle mover in a main event and get covered by the worldwide leader of ESPN? Do you have somebody at 205 pounds in mind? And I don't think you do. So if Pereira wins, we can hang back and we can find that person. We do it every Saturday. We find that person, tell the story, pop the popcorn, bring in the smoke and mirrors, and go from there. Right? We can, but it would just seem as though the work would already be done to do with him what he wants to do anyway and put him at heavyweight. Now you're just having a question of, is it against Aspinall or is it against Jones? And that's with a win. That's with a win. If he loses to Ankalaev, he'll be a heavyweight before the press conference is over. People often forget that. They forget how Pereira got 205 pounds in the first place. They think he cleaned out 185. People forget that, like their mind plays a trick on them there. He did not get to 205 by cleaning out 185. He got to 205 by losing at 185. And that's what's so interesting, because in many ways there's not a loss. I want Pereira at heavyweight. I want him at heavyweight. Wherever that goes. I want him as a bargaining chip for the drama. I want to see if he can do champ, champ, champ. There's probably nobody else in my realistic time in the sport will get there. There's definitely nobody else on the roster right now. Nobody. I'm curious. And to get what I want, in some ways I get if the guy I want loses. It's very interesting. It feels like a win-win for me. But I think it is for Pereira too. I think he wants to be at heavyweight. I don't think he's got a huge interest in Ankalaev. He's a competitor, and this who came up, and let's go deal with this so that we can get back to what I want, which is champ, and GOAT status. And he's only a win or two away from that. If Pereira becomes champ in 3 different divisions, it doesn't matter if it's interim champ. If Pereira becomes champ in 3 different divisions, we now no longer have an argument of pound for pound great. There's nobody else that covered the spread. You can sit around and debate who would have done well at this weight class, or you can take a guy that actually went to 3 different weight classes and did it. We would lose the ability to argue GOAT. We would no longer say, who's the GOAT? What do you think about GOAT? We would say, Alex Pereira. Who could be the next Alex Pereira? It's a very interesting spot. And it's very rare that a fighter, particularly a champion, particularly the highest paid guy on the roster as champion, can be in a pressureless situation. But in many ways, I feel like that's exactly what Pereira is in.